Hey, Dr. Minesha here, and I am super excited to be able to share with you our special guest for today. I actually love the opportunity to be able to connect with you each and every day on this podcast where we introduce you to real people, right? Real women and men who are leaders, and not just any leader, but extraordinary leaders. And so I would like to introduce to you at this time none the other than Miss Tycia Dennis. Thank you so much for coming on and joining us for the podcast today, Queen. Mother
Hello.
of five, right? Mother of five,
Yes.
wife, business owner. It doesn't get any more blending than that, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So, first of all, I just cannot stress enough my gratitude for you just being here, carving out time to connect with us. I know that you have children, you're a homeschool mom, so you're not just any mom, but you are home with your children most of the day. So, I cannot wait to dive into some discussion about what life looks like for you. But would you just share with us a little bit about, just your roles and responsibilities?
Ooh. Goals and responsibilities.
Your roles.
Roles.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's many roles, right? Daughter, um, specifically of the Most High. That's most and foremost important. Wife of Marcus Dennis. Mom of five Dennis people. Uh, teacher of five Dennis people. Nurse of five. All those things.
Yes.
Co-op facilitator for us at our co-op that we are in once a week. I facilitate for seventh grade in areas of science, philosophy, and Bible. And I mean, there's a lot of different ways. Of course,
Well, that was
leading,
what was another one?
well, trying to the business thing, entrepreneurship.
Yes,
We're trying to do a few
entrepreneurship.
of those different things, and probably trying to add one more that we may discuss later. So
Wow.
enough as is.
Okay.
But
And the
I'm
reason why I think it's so important that people that watch the podcast hear the roles, and that for one that we understand that whenever we have, especially so many roles, it's very easy to let these roles become our identity. So it's a part of our identity, but it's not who we are. At the end of the day, you are a child of God, yes, and Tycia Dennis. And sometimes Tycia Dennis can get lost in the sauce of all the roles. Okay. And so
very true statement.
I want people to really see that you're not alone and that these roles that we play, and they're like balls that we're juggling. And it's so important that I really emphasize that in this moment, because what I have learned and experienced for so many clients, Tycia, is that we're juggling all of these balls, and we're juggling and we're juggling. And then as soon as like maybe 10% of the balls may drop in a day, we are hard on ourselves, and we go to bed at night really judging ourselves and really critiquing ourselves. The type of women that I attract, first of all, let me do my disclaimer, not women who are content with a mediocre life, but extraordinary women who want to live and lead different, who want to love, live, and lead differently. And so with that, there's a level of expectation that we put on ourselves. And it's like, man, yeah, you may have dropped the 10% of the balls, but you got 90% of those balls still flipping.
Right.
And really being able to take a moment to acknowledge you and all the women like you who are listening, and even the male leaders who are listening who can relate to the multiple roles that you play, and just take a pause right now and say, kudos to you. All right? Yeah, I'll take a sip to that. Kudos to you. Sometimes we're moving so much in our day that we don't hear that. And so I just want to say that I admire you. And I think this is just a small moment of acknowledgement for you to see that God's grace is moving through you so sufficiently, and that even on your worst day, you still rocking. Okay? So don't forget that.
I'll take that. God be the glory. I'll take that.
So let's talk a little bit. One of the things that I really want to dive into is this conversation around homeschool. Because in my opinion, I feel that there is so many myths and misnomers around everyday women. And when I say everyday women, just meaning that they're not a celebrity. They are women that their lifestyle relates more so to ours. The idea of being a homeschool mom feels so stretched, right? So I'm also a homeschool mom, for those who did not know that. But my dynamic of a homeschool mom, I feel, is a lot different than Tycia's, because Tycia is extremely hands-on in the academic aspect of it, and I'm more of a support mom, is what the homeschool educator likes to call me. And so I like for people to know the spectrums of what that looks like in homeschool, because a lot of times they're like, oh, I can't do that. There's no way I'm going to fail my children. I can't. I'd rather take them to the school, you know. And I really want to like debunk some myths when it comes to homeschool, and really kind of talk about how the whole idea got started with you getting to the point where you're like, you know what, I think homeschool would be the best route. And then honestly, some challenges and some wins that came along with that decision.
So how did I get started homeschooling? That's initially,
Mm-hmm.
well, I've always liked working with children. I was in childcare cluster in high school, and my degree is in early childhood education. So that's just what I like to do. I taught for 15 years before I started homeschooling. So part of mine is kind of seeing the system from a teacher's perspective, from inside. I taught in the private as well as the public sector. So just seeing the different between the two, but also just seeing the things in it that I thought could be better. So I kind of got my mind wrapped around, when my turn comes, I'd like this to be different in
Mm.
both different ways. But and then I did, have children, and I was still teaching. So I did have to put my first two for a little bit into daycare, and that was my biggest struggle. Like
Mm.
I understood after teaching for so long the value of parental time with their children. I always said that, to parents, make sure you read to your kids, do all the things I would say as a teacher.
Yeah.
Um, and then so I found myself counting the hours that my
Mm.
children were in daycare and trying to see if they got more hours than I did, and
Mm.
literally counting the hours
Wow.
because I didn't like it. And so, you know, but I had to get to a place where I felt like, God said it's time to let go. And in all
Yeah.
honesty, it wasn't a ideal situation. And I don't mind, and my husband doesn't mind me saying, I mean, I earned more than my husband.
Right. Of course.
So that was not ideal for me to stop working once we had
Right.
children. But
Right.
um,
Right.
both of us deciding that we felt like that's what God wanted us to do, so we did it.
Wow.
And
So what I hear you saying is that you went against the grain of what most people in society would think would be the responsible, financially sound decision, and you did something based off of pure obedience. And one of the things that made you really kind of lean into the idea was more so of the hours that you were looking at that was being spent with essentially a stranger, versus the parent, and that kind of convicted you in a way.
right.
And then you kind of made the bold decision to say, let's leap and do this. And so I know that there's been some challenges along the way. I know for me, one of the things that I learned the most from homeschooling my children is, you really get to know your children. Like, it's one thing when you pick them up after school, you're like, how was your day? Oh, it was great. I did this and I ate this, and then, oh, great. My kids are the greatest. But then when you are experiencing what the teacher essentially will be experiencing throughout that day, and I'm talking more so about, the personality types, the true weaknesses, the core, and even the strengths. It, as a parent, it equips you and gives you a deeper insight that I don't think it's very, very challenging to get, without that time there in their presence, and seeing how they respond to situations, seeing how they handle accountability and ownership, and see, like, there's so much stuff that you can see. And as a coach especially, it was a slap in the face, because it was so different. You know how we have our ideal self, in the ideal version of life. I think to sum up work-life harmony in essence, what it is that I do is I help to interrupt the pattern and help leaders see how aligned is your ideal self and your actual reality. Oftentimes they don't align. You know, oftentimes we have an ideal version of how we see ourselves and our family and our children, but the reality of it, and even the things that we say that we want to see in them, but the manifestation of it is not matching. And the reason why is the behaviors and the actions are not aligning with what our mind is envisioning. You see what I'm saying? So that's all we do with the work-life harmony and the system and the program is to hold you accountable, to your vision and to make sure that the actions that you're doing every day and you're showing up every day are aligning with the ideal version, what I call the divine identity. So that's awesome that you made that courageous step, and that you've been able to do this for how long now?
Ooh, that was in, when did I stop working? 2013.
Oh wow! So you a veteran in this thing. Okay. So then you begin to explore the entrepreneur role, and I want to kind of switch gears just a tad and talk about what that looked like, navigating through homeschooling mom, getting somewhat of a rhythm with that, and now adding in the blend of entrepreneurship. What did that look like? What were the challenges you had to face and maybe still facing?
Yeah. And I would add too, you get to know who you are. You said you get to know who your kids are, but you get to know who you are
That's so
when
true.
you're
That's
homeschooling.
so good.
They
That is
tend,
so good. That is so good.
they tend to
It's
be little
true.
parts of you. So
Yes.
you get to
Yes.
see that a
Right?
lot. Right.
Yeah.
But it's also been, the homeschooling journey has been different honestly. I've went through, my older three, my older two did go to a private school for about 3 years in there.
Hmm.
I've done virtual homeschool. I've done, there's different things. We had that crazy thing, during 2020, which is when they were coming out of it. And I will put a plug in and tell people that was not homeschooling. What we did in 2020 was not homeschooling. So
Right. Yeah.
if that's your
Yeah.
scope
Well,
of homeschooling and that's why you don't want to do it, that wasn't homeschooling. That was office managing at your home for your kids, and letting someone else dictate what you're doing while you be the office manager. So that was not the same. But so I was pregnant with, I mean, we've always had a little bit of thing here and there, to try to make ends meet, because we've had times when, the ends just weren't meeting. And
hmm.
so, my husband has had to do other things, and we've had to do extra things. And that's another thing I like to say to people, because people say to me a lot, well, I don't have the privilege of homeschooling. Like they think that, homeschooling means we have this six-figure salary that we're just, and that is no, it's more of a
Hmm.
sacrifice than a privilege sometimes. So, but definitely around the time I was pregnant with my last, so that would have been 2016. At the end of the year is when the opportunity for me to do Norwex came up. And so it was more of, honestly, I wasn't even thinking entrepreneurship wise. I just loved what I saw.
Okay.
It went along with our mission in our home about being, just cleaner, healthier
So I
versions of.
have to put a pin in this because whenever I get some juicy stuff, like you all know who are following me, the whole concept of these conversations is that we're having conversation and we're extrapolating the principles so that they can transform into practices. That's what this podcast is all about, right? So we're listening, and eventually, what will happen as you continue to keep following me and listening to the podcast is that you'll begin to see that you'll become what I call a system thinker, right? And you'll be really sharp at understanding the core principles of the work-life harmony system. So for those of you who are new, the work-life harmony system, the three things that I say that no matter what, I don't care what the core problem is, the work-life harmony system is a solution because it addresses every core root issue that a leader can have in their home and in their work life. I know that's a powerful, bold statement to make, but I'm confidently when I say that I have proven it has been tested time and time again in my life and the clients that I serve. And if you don't believe me, I want you to practice it in your own life. Those three things are you ready? Okay. Those three things are improper boundaries, right? So not having the proper boundaries, and there's 5 different levels to boundaries. So that's another thing. We're not diving deep into what that looks like, right? Relational boundaries. I mean, I won't go there, but just know we got to unpack it. Exceptional organization. So for those of you who are organized, I mean exceptional. Mental organization, physical organization, digital organization, like organized. And then sustainable systems. Boundaries, organization, and sustainable systems is your solution. So I want to go back to what Tycia said. She said some really powerful things. One of the things that we do with the work-life harmony system is that we help you to create your dominating year and quarter prep so that you are actively getting your rhythm, creating your own work-life harmony flow. And one of those key things that we start with is vision. And vision is so important because it helps align the decisions and the goals that you make in your life. So she said that the business that she chose just made sense because it aligned with her family's mission. That's powerful, right? And so when the mission would align with her vision, I imagine that's the alignment of it. You have a vision, and then you have the mission. The vision is the big picture, and then the mission is the everyday drive to get to that big vision, right? And so when you have that, and I'm not talking about like a company where you just put it up on a frame and everybody recites it and they don't know what in the world it really means, and that's why I help clients craft it so that it's real. It feels real. We're using the words that resonate with the people that you're speaking to so that your kids understand my family, love, live, give, inspire, to love unconditionally, live intentionally, give generously, and inspire others to do the same. From 5 years old to teenager, you need to know that, understand that, and the decisions we make as a family will need to align with that. So that's awesome that you said that. Another thing that I really wanted to extrapolate from what you said was when you talked about there were seasons when you brought in the entrepreneurship that you had to be flexible. You had to be palatable. So it was a season where it was like, hey, we got 5 kids. It makes more sense for the 2 oldest one or the 3 oldest one to do private school for a year. Let me get grounded in the younger ones and get them going and make sure I understand what's happening in their world and make sure I can get a curriculum that works for them. And then we'll bring them back in. These are all strategies. And sometimes what I see happening is that we get so bogged down in the original epiphany and the original move of God that we're unable to be flexible to what's happening in the rhema, like right now, what's best for now. And not putting a judgment on yourself because you had 2 kids that had to end up going back to going back to private school and coming back in. Like, no, it's all a part of what you're needing. And the reason why that's so important is because I never want this podcast to be a one size fit all. She did it, so I should do it. I feel like women get into that sometimes. You know what I'm saying? Well, Tycia, she's awesome. Look at everything she's able to do. Now I have to. And now you're going home after you listen to the podcast and you're trying to put together this curriculum and you're pulling your kids out of school for the next semester. Like, no, And I'm saying this because it's happened. I've had people, I've listened to you. I got so inspired. I quit my job. No. I didn't tell you to go quit your job. There has to be strategy and implementation and a vision and a plan and an execution process, to this whole thing. Right. And so I want to make sure that I do those disclaimers and really help women to see that there's a grace to it. There's a process to it. There's a timing, God's timing. There's a lot of elements. And you have to have the space for grace for it. Right. And how do you know when that time is happening? And a lot of that comes from time with God and leaning in, like Tycia shared, and really, really feeling that in your spirit that it's time to make that shift. And so I really, really commend you for that. Tell me about one of the biggest challenges that you had to face with just business and being a homeschool mom. Like when did you just have a tough day and you were like, you know what? I don't know. This is gonna. What was it for you?
Trying to pick one would be the issue. Honestly, but let's see. I don't a tough day. I think it would probably be just one of the things that stands out is one of my children. And, we always see those memes and those things about that particular child that would tell you if that one came first, they might be the only one.
Yep, I
We
know.
we all have one of those, especially when the number goes up, the more likely you have one. But I have one of those. So
I got
um,
one too.
I can say he, because my first four are boys, so they won't know who I'm talking about. But he is definitely, and he's challenging, and it's not even in a negative way all the time. I've come to learn and realize it's just that he challenges me, and he challenges anyone he's around. He challenges the integrity in a room. That's what I've learned. Like, he's very, you know he has high levels of discernment. He's just that one who's like, what's
Hmm.
going on here? I thought this was, this is supposed to be. So but very loving at the same time. So him being in school, and this is no knock at school or where they were, because I understand that certain things school has to do because of their logistics,
Right.
because they have a lot of people. There's
Policies,
things they
procedures.
have to do, that just aren't necessarily life lessons, but they just have to do it to keep order. So I
Absolutely.
understand that. But he definitely was one who showed me that, although I knew when I put them in school that it was temporary, it was just, I had 5 kids in just under 6 years. So for a little bit, I had 5 kids, 5 and under. So that was probably the main reason why they went into school, was just, my husband was like, you might need to get a minute.
Right.
um, so so I knew it was temporary that they were going, but he was the one that definitely, if I thought I was going to change my mind and just allow them to stay, because we loved the school and the school loved them well. And so it was a great partnership. And so there were times when you'd be like, maybe we could just keep doing this.
Right. Right.
But he was the one that kept going, no, and not even on purpose, but he just, he didn't go with the flow. He wasn't a
Mm.
fall in line and do what everyone else is doing and all of those things. So he would be my one that got suspended. I don't probably,
Right.
you know, um, or whatnot. And we would have to, talk about it, and have conversations about it. And mind you, unbeknownst to him, usually that would happen, but then there would be an administrator going, but because it more was his suspensions and the things he did, wasn't about he was completely wrong. It was just learning how to react in situations.
Yeah.
Those were things. So things like that is what made me have to say, okay, yeah. So that was rough when you have your mama hat on going, trying not to be mama bear because you want your kid not to be getting
Right.
mauled on and picked on, but then you've organized things and now they're kind of flowing, and then there's this wrench
Right.
um, that gets put in it. But so just a moment where it had to be, okay, this is what you say you wanted to do anyway, and before you allow um, someone to, there's one of my interruptions.
She looks just like you.
I know. I'll be right back. No, go back. Yes, yes.
So, what I wanted to talk with you about, you mentioned about getting your flow in your systems. I think being torn, if I'm understanding you correctly, the big challenge of bringing in entrepreneurship was really kind of being torn, finding that place where it did feel like it was a good partnership and you really didn't want to leave, but you still needed to be obedient. And your son reminded you that there was something a little bit different that he needed from mom in the home setting that he just wasn't getting. And so being able to still be obedient and doing what you know was necessary for that time, that was a challenge. Let's talk a little bit about some strategies that work well for you. I mean, you've got quite a bit of roles and responsibilities. Obviously there's some things that you're doing that is working well. I would love for you to spend some time sharing that with us.
Um, the biggest thing I think is just to remember why. Um, Constantly be reminded, I've got a little corner by my bed with all kind of pictures they've put up, or just sayings or things that I thought was really good or neat or whatever, and it's right there when I wake up. That's what I see. So just kind of being reminded why I do this.
Yeah.
Just having a why, and then remembering what the why is, so that when life comes, or things come that kind of can make you forget your why, and you can kind of just start doing stuff, or good opportunities, quote unquote, come, and it's like, why don't I do that? Why don't I? Is that
Right.
kind of leading you toward why you're doing this though? So, I would say having a why that I'm sticking to.
Love it.
Uh,
I think that's really good. I think for those of you who are listening, a lot of times I always like to break down words that are used often, because sometimes people are like, well, what is why? Nobody ever talks about it. So everybody just assuming that everybody really knows what that means. But when it goes back to that vision, when you have that vision, right? That's the why you are doing what it is that you're doing, right? And then what it is that you're doing, understanding what you are doing and why you are doing it actually creates even more alignment. And when you put a reason behind what you're doing, what Tycia is expressing is that it creates an anchor for you, right? And so that's what I always recommend for our clients. And through our system, that's part of what we do, is that we really create not just a reason, but an emotional reason. Like writing down your reason and then literally adding more emotion to it. Like, I really want to be able to do this because I want this to happen. And when this happens, what emotional impact is that going to make? Because scientifically, it shows that emotionally sound reasons create more of a stimulation in the body and in the mind to press forward. It's all about resilience. When you're dealing with that many roles and responsibilities, you have to have that level of resilience. And so I just commend you for that. I'm going to wrap up with just one last question, because I know your kids are starting to pull at your coattail here. What would you tell a mom who is considering homeschool? Maybe they already have a business, or they eventually want to be in business, or maybe they just are in the place where they are pondering the idea. What would you leave with them?
I would say that even when I was a teacher, I remember I had a principal who used to start the year off with a conversation with the parents. And her first thing she said, the same thing every year. And I worked there for probably 4 or 5 years. And every year at the beginning, she would say, "You're your child's first teacher."
Mm.
Because if it works out for them, and when it works out, you'll be their biggest cheerleader, and you're who they're going to thank when they get a chance to thank. But if it doesn't, it's your couch they're going to be on, not mine. So, um, so I say that to say, you're your child's first teacher. It's you, and we spend a lot of time trying to get other systems to be what we want them to be for our children, instead of being what our children need us to be. So if you feel the push to homeschool, you feel the desire to do it, never seen the righteous forsaken nor seed begging for bread. God put it in you to give your children everything that they need. There's no question about that. It's not, can you do it? It's, if you want to, if you're ready, and when you want to. So I would just encourage you, and it doesn't have to look a certain way. There's no cookie cutter way to do homeschool. We are in a co-op, and there's so many different ways that it's done in the different families, from those who want to, and don't think about our thought process of school when you do it. You have to, it's a process called unschooling that happens, that we all have to do, that me as a former teacher had to do. Like, I had to get my mind out of, I need to do this like I did in the classroom. No, we're teaching them how to be productive adults,
Right.
in all honesty. So, and I had a professor come to our co-op, and she said, "I just love when I get homeschool kids, and we're like, why? They're just, and she couldn't put her finger on it. They just do well," she kept saying. And I say, could it be that they don't have to deal with the jump from someone telling them what to do all day to learning to manage their time themselves? And she said, I think that's exactly it, because my children have checklists, and they have to learn to manage their list and their time on their own, and they range from 6 to 12. So it's just a matter of getting the job done. They tend to be a little more entrepreneurship minded, just because
That's the point I was going to make. Yeah, that's the point I was going to make. Yeah. And
And
that's the part I love about it.
and
Just
that's not
being,
something they're teaching in the system as much.
yes, yeah,
Unfortunately, they don't teach
yeah,
those characteristics. So they
right.
tend to want to do things. I mean, we do something called market days in our co-op every year where they get to make something, do something, and they sell it to each other for like
That's
less
great.
than $1, but they get all the concepts of creating a business and,
That's
selling
great.
it to each other. So I
There's
think
so, like you said, there's so many creativity. There's so many ways that you can infuse yourself. Entrepreneurship is a part of me, and so I get to infuse that in them. We have something called the Scholar Shop, and so I have these character cash, and they get these things, and they get points knocked off for integrity and different character principles as well. And I am looking forward to putting that all in the system as well for the parents that are part of our community and our movement, so that you can have practical skills and principles to help support and undergird you so that you know that you're not alone. Well, that is our time now. I am so grateful to have connected with you. Thank you for pouring and showering us with your wisdom. And I love your final statements to every mom like you, and parent who is interested in considering homeschooling. I want to encourage everybody to like and share this link. Spread it, spread the word. The podcast is all about learning to love, live, and lead differently. If you are truly in a place where you really want to find balance, let me just go ahead and save you some time. You're not going to find it, it doesn't exist. But work life harmony, you won't find, but you definitely can create it. And this is your moment to create it. Thanks again, Tycia, for your time. I look forward
thank
to
you.
connecting with you sooner than later. Bye bye, everyone.